Today we're going to walk through the steps for making your own fabric lanyard. Fabric lanyards are awesome for keychains, to hold your badges, or to add a small wallet to, or a little pouch for summertime fun to make things easy and accessible so that you don't have to have things in your hands. And I love that making your own allows you to customize it to however you want. You can choose whatever fabric you would like and express yourself using your fabric lanyard. To begin, we're going to talk about some of the supplies you are going to need. Now, I prefer to make my fabric lanyards with a breakaway latch to it to prevent any risk of suffocation or choking hazards. And so if you are going to do that, you can buy these sets of breakaway clasps on Amazon is where I got them. And I will try to include a link to this particular one that I have used that I purchased from Amazon in the description below. You are also going to need a lobster clasp. Now, as you can see from these, there are lots of different sizes that you can get. And when you see on a lobster clasp, it references a size, it's referring to the width of this piece right here, of the opening for the fabric that is going to be going through that lanyard, or through the lobster clasp, excuse me. I really like the look of a skinnier lanyard, excuse me. So I would use a 1/2 inch lobster clasp. If you want a little bit more bulk to your lanyard and have it a little bit wider, then you can go up to a 3/4 inch or even a full 1 inch lobster clasp, whichever you prefer. It doesn't change anything but just the size of the fabric you're going to need. Depending on what size of lobster clasp you're going to use, you're going to multiply whatever that width is by 4 in order to calculate the width of the fabric strip you will need for your lanyard. Where I am using the 1/2 inch lobster clasp, I will need a 2-inch wide strip of fabric. If I were to go all the way up to the 1-inch lobster clasp, I would need a 4-inch wide piece of fabric. And then for an adult size lanyard, I prefer a full width of fabric strip, so 40 to 42 inches. If you are making it for a smaller teenager or a tween, I would reduce the length of the fabric strip down to about 36 inches. Seems to be a great length for most kids who would be old enough to be able to wear a lanyard. So you will cut your piece of fabric, the width that you've calculated by the length that you need, and then we're ready to start making our lanyards. To begin, you will take your fabric strip and you are going to press it in half along the entire length of your strip. Once you have a nice crease, you will open up that first crease, and then you're going to bring the 2 raw edges into that center line and press them well. The next thing that you will do is refold that first crease, now capturing the 2 raw edges that you have just pressed to the middle, and then press again along the entire length of your strip of fabric. Finally, we are going to go to our sewing machine and edge stitch along both sides of our fabric strip to create the fabric we need for our lanyard. If you want, you could lengthen your stitch length just a little bit. It helps have a little bit more of a finished look to it, I think. But you want to make sure as you sew, I usually start with the side where the 2 folded edges are, and make sure that you are catching both edges in your stitching as you go down, and make sure that they are lined up as well as you can get them along the entire length of your strip. You may want to adjust the fold a little bit, and if you're really struggling, it may be helpful to use wonder clips or pins to make sure that those 2 edges stay together along the whole length as you're stitching it. Once you have them stitched, now we're ready to add the lobster clasp to it. All you are going to do is slide it into your lobster clasp. And on my machine, I have a definite top and bottom to my stitching, as much as I try to fiddle with the tension so I don't. And so I will make sure that the top is on the outside, and then I'm just going to fold my fabric strip in half and then make sure that my lobster clasp is at the center of that fold. You can have two choices here as you go to sew down this seam. You can sew it down where the two pieces are lined up right on top of one another, or you can angle them a little bit away from each other to help your lanyard lay a little bit more flat. The fabric piece is long enough, I find I don't really have to do that, but if you like the look of that better, then that's an option, is to offset your two straps as you sew it together. In order to get a nice edge, stitched edge up close to my lobster clasp, I like to do two different things. The first thing I will do is switch out my normal presser foot for a zipper foot. And then the second thing that I will do is move my needle as far over as I can so that it's as close to the edge of this lobster clasp as I can get it. So I will take this to my sewing machine and I will put the zipper foot up next to it. And then again, my needle is moved to the far position, and that will allow me to get my stitches as close to that lobster clasp as I can. Make sure that you back stitch once or twice on both ends of that to secure that lobster clasp really well. The final thing that we're going to do is add our safety clasp to it. So we're going to begin, I just find it's easier to start with the female end of the safety clasp. I'm going to take one side of my lanyard. And if you'll notice, there is just a slight curve to this safety clasp, and I like the top part of the curve to be the top of my lanyard. So I'm going to take the top of my fabric through the top of my safety clasp, bring it to the bottom, and then I will fold over that fabric piece about 1/4 inch. And then I will fold it again so that that initial 1/4 inch fold is all the way inside that loop there, so that my raw edge is neatly tucked in here. And then I will take it to my sewing machine and I will stitch down just along this edge. Again, you want to make sure that you back stitch at the beginning and the end. It isn't critical that you get your stitches super close to this safety clasp. And I find that my preference is to focus on making sure all of these layers of fabric are lined up. And it's easier for me to do that if I'm stitching a little bit further away from the safety clasp, rather than trying to get my stitches so close that I lose the ability to kind of control those layers of fabric and make sure that they are lined up. So I will line that up and sew down the first side, and then the next step is to add the final side. And the only trick with this step is you want to make sure that you aren't twisting your fabric of your lanyard and creating a kink in it in any way. So what I will do is smooth out my fabric so that it is laying down, and then I like to have the two ends kind of come together so there is a little bit of a turn in the fabric, but not a twist, if that makes any sense at all. So then I will make sure that the male end of my safety clasp again is curved down, and then bring that end of the fabric in through the top, fold it over that 1/4 inch, fold it again, and then stitch down that seam right there to hide that raw edge inside of that hem right there. And when I do, then I end up with a lanyard that has both ends sewn down and a safety clasp so that we're not strangling anybody. And I can make a fashion statement and have a beautiful lanyard. This is a great project for beginning sewers. It's a great way to carry around a chapstick with you in the summertime, using one of my chapstick holders, or I have a fun mini wallet pattern that is fantastic for these, especially if you have kids that are on the go and want to make a little run to the gas station or to catch the ice cream man. You can use lanyards, and they're super great for keeping track of all of your fun things for summertime or anytime. If you've enjoyed this video, I hope you will like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can also find me on my blog with lots more ideas at amarooneydesigns.com. And until I see you next time, happy sewing, my friends.